even though it doesn't happen very often, it is entirely possible for the Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon version of Blue Eyes to actually be the best variant. And this has only happened one time in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was during Zodiacs when they were full power. And the reason being is that Zodiacs all had very small amounts of defense points, which meant that Chaos Max Dragon could completely just run them over and sometimes just kill your opponent in one hit. But also, and the more important aspect is that the Zodiac deck, the main form of removal was targeted destruction, which Chaos Max is protected against. And I actually think that right now is the second time in history that Chaos Max is the better version of Blue Eyes compared to the more standard version or the Amorphage Goliath version. And all we have to look at basically is the top matchups. And there's two things happening right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's mainly either Sky Striker and Trick Stars, or it's like the extra link boards with Nightmares. And Chaos Max Dragon happens to be pretty good against both those decks. So against the extra link versions, this deck doesn't really care about going to the extra deck too much, so you can just run over all their monsters, do a ton of damage. And outside of Borreload Dragon, this card doesn't have a lot of ways to actually get off the field for any of those extra link decks, and especially against the Trickstar Sky Striker deck, which is made up of, very similar to Zodiac, all small monsters and targeted destruction. And outside of Borreload Dragon, there's not a lot that can actually kill a Chaos Max in the modern metagame. Yeah, there are Kaijus, but a lot of people are cutting those in favor of the Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere mode, which doesn't do a lot unless you actually control 3 monsters. So as long as you make sure you only have Chaos Max Dragon and one other monster, you should be pretty much set. So yeah, there's like a lot of things that went into making Chaos Max Dragon randomly good again, but this is a dedicated going second build, and it's not that bad. So let's talk about it. I thought I would capitalize on the one time that I feel Chaos Max Dragon is actually pretty good. So let's zoom in there and get started talking about it. So 2 copies of Chaos Max Dragon, that is fairly standard. I think most people just play 2 by now. You don't really need 3. You only really ever want to summon one of them, but we want the 2 just in case you banish one off of Desires or have to discard it. The 3 copies of the OG Blue Eyes White Dragon. I feel like on every Blue Eyes video there's like a debate about which artwork is the best. I happen to just like this one the most, and yeah, that's why I play it. But I think my second favorite one is the movie pack one, but I don't really own those. But I think that the OG LOB version of this card looks really sick, so I'm going to play that one. Play whichever one you feel comfortable with. There's no right or wrong answer. 3 copies of Alternative. I think that's pretty obvious. It's like the best Blue Eyes card, arguably, so gotta play 3 of it. 1 copy of Dragon Spirit of White. This is not like a long-term controlling deck. You just kind of want to kill your opponent in like 2 turns, maybe 3 turns, and in that case, you just need the 1 copy of Dragon Spirit of White. And then also we have 3 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue. Yeah, this card's pretty good. I think in this deck, a lot of times you use your normal summon for Manju, so you just want to discard this to summon something from deck, but it's still a really solid card. 3 copies of the White Stone of Ancients. Obviously, a really good card to get back your cards, and you shouldn't really have to use this card too often, but a lot of times you do need that that 1 add back if you discard something off of trade-in. And then 1 copy of the White Stone of Legend. This card just kind of gets worse and worse as time goes on, I feel, but right now, 1 copy, it seems to be fine. We're not playing cards of consonants or anything, but it's still okay to discard with Melody. It's probably like the best thing to discard for Melody, actually. And then 3 copies of Manju to search either Chaos Max, Chaos Form, or Advanced Ritual Art. Obviously really powerful. And that's it for the monsters. No hand traps. You just want to kind of combo off. And really, with this deck, and one of the cool things about this deck right now is that you don't really care what your opponent does. They can extra link you, they can put up their like Trickstar combos and stuff, but as long as you can like summon Chaos Max Dragon, you don't really mind what your opponent's board is. So yeah, I don't really need to play hand traps too much. 2 copies of Chaos Form, 2 copies of Advanced Ritual Art. I just think this is like the correct ratio. Like, you want to resolve the Advanced Ritual Arts, but like also Chaos Form is good when you, because like a lot of times in this deck you use Melody to take 1 Blue Eyes out of the deck, and then you summon 1 from the deck with Spirit. Sometimes you add 1 from the deck with White Stones, then you have no Blue Eyes left in deck, and in those cases you really need to use the Chaos Form. I think in most cases you'd rather just use Advanced Ritual Art, but you need the Chaos Form just in case. For the draw power, 3 copies of Trade-In, obviously really powerful, and then 2 copies of Desires. This deck is almost entirely comprised of 3-ofs, so Desires, you'd have to be seriously unlucky for Desires to be bad in this deck, but I think just conventionally, if we're talking about the history of Pot of Desires, when this card came out, Blue Eyes was the best deck pretty much, and yeah, this card is like almost made for Blue Eyes. Like, you just don't care about any cards in your deck being banished, so I think that it's kind of a crime to not play Pot of Desires in a Blue Eyes deck. For searching, we have 3 copies of Melody. Pretty insane. Obviously, you can search Chaos Max. It's like the main selling point of this card, but it's just a good card in general. Good for getting stuff in the graveyard too, like your stones. And for the revival, 3 Return of the Dragon Lords. Pretty good. I hear it's pretty good. And now we have the actual Monster Reborn. I'm not playing Soul Charge in this deck only because this is a dedicated going second build, and a lot of times you don't even get our battle phase because we have to evenly match our opponent. And so just the Monster Reborn, you're not really, like I said, this isn't a control deck. You're not trying to set up a huge board, and then in many cases you're actually just trying to restrain yourself to 2 monsters just so you don't get sphere moded. But yeah, Monster Reborn's really good. Soul Charge, not so much in this version. And then lastly, 2 Called by the Grave. Thank God this card came out. This makes playing Blue Eyes so much better. This deck loses to like 1,000 hand traps. It loses to Ash Blossom, it loses to Droll, it loses to Ghost Ogre sometimes, just randomly if they Ghost Ogre when you're trying to set up a board. And man, this deck just loses to like every hand trap. So a card like Called by the Grave, super crucial for making this deck go. And yeah, this card is way less clunky than Siphon Gear Gamma, a card that I played in Blue Eyes because obviously it was like the only way to stop hand traps, but it was so awkward. Like, you draw the driver and it was terrible, or you draw multiple Gamma and it was terrible, or you would have it in hand and you'd like summon Manju and they would Ash it and you couldn't activate Gamma because you had a monster on the board. Gamma's a really good card, but in Blue Eyes a lot of times it was just super awkward to actually resolve. So Call by the Grave, though, you can just always activate. It's so powerful. I love this card so much. It makes Blue Eyes like so much better. And then lastly, the sort of priciest card in the deck list. Although this deck doesn't have Infinite Impermanence, doesn't have Ash Blossom, so maybe it's okay just having one really pricey card. But Evenly Match. This card is super critical to actually resolving the Chaos Max Dragon. You can side of one of the main downsides of the Chaos Max Dragon deck against Trickstars is if they have Reincarnation, they can just chain it to the Ritual card, and then if you don't draw Chaos Max, you're totally screwed. So hopefully they don't keep the Evenly Match, or they don't keep the Reincarnation when you evenly match them. I'd say in general they don't keep it, so you don't have to worry about that too much. If they preemptively Reincarnation you, that's okay. It's just when they chain the Reincarnation to your Ritual spell card, you're really screwed. But yeah, you just go second, you let them set up their board, do whatever they want. Evenly Matched is insanely good this format. Pretty much all the Sky Striker decks are like putting their whole hand on the board except for their hand traps. So you just evenly match them down to 1 card, summon Chaos Max, and win the game. I don't want to say this card is necessary to play in this deck, but I'd say that this deck is definitely a lot worse off if you don't own Evenly Match. But I suppose if you really want to play without it, you can just play like Twin Twisters or something. But I think, man, Evenly Match is so good right now. It's just, I just want to play it and everything, and this deck's really good for it. Anyway, though, that was the main deck. On to the extra deck. 2 Blue Eye Spirit Dragon. This card got a lot worse with Ancient Fairy Dragon being banned, because now you can't use this card to make a level 8 Synchro monster like Crystal Wing or Omega, but it's still really good. We can now summon Michael. Pretty good removal card. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. Fairly good defensive card on your opponent's turn. And then we have Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, probably the target that you're going to summon most often. But a lot of times, like, you're not even summoning these cards. I mean, sometimes it happens, but I think that rank 8s are like a lot more likely. Speaking of, we do play 1 Galaxy Eyes Tachyon, 1 Galaxy Eyes Full Armor Photon. I am playing Cypher. I wasn't playing this card for a while, and a lot of people just play Cypher, maybe don't play the other 2 guys here, the Galaxy Eyes guys. But I think that, that rhymed. But Cypher's cool for scaling monsters. It got a lot better with see, like, nowadays we have so many different Link monsters that we can actually, like, take stuff and make something good. I felt like back in the day, like, when Links first came out, you really couldn't use this card effectively, but now that we have, like, the Nightmares, you can actually do stuff with the cards you take, so it's cool. Yeah, you really want to take like your opponent's Link monsters with this, like the higher Link rating the better. And then obviously the Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon. This card is not as insane in this version as it is in the Morphage Goliath version. It certainly is good, and it is a big card, but I think in general a lot of times you just want to make the Hope Harbinger. This card is just really powerful. But yeah, I mean, the Dark Matter obviously is a strong card. It's just in this version, because we don't play the Amorphage Goliath, you're just basically getting like card advantage, but that's about it. You're not actually like doing anything, where I think Harbinger is just a lot better. For the links, Link Kribo, super important. Probably the most important card in the entire extra deck, maybe even more so than Spirit Dragon. You obviously only need the one copy because it summons itself from the graveyard, but you can summon either of the stones and then just make Link Kribo and search a card. That's like insane, so Link Kribo is really good. Nightmare Phoenix, really popular card right now. This card is, I mean, it's way more popular than like Tornado Dragon was when it was a rank 4. Maybe Tornado Dragon came a little too late right into the Exceed Monster cycle, but I mean, it came out like years after Exceeds came out. But Nightmare Phoenix, super popular, super strong. We're gonna play one copy. Nightmare Cerberus is fairly decent. I think like the best use for this card is taking out Lycoris on your opponent's side of the field, or anything that they summon with Reincarnation. One copy of Unicorn. To be completely honest, you won't make Unicorn or the Borreload that we have as the last card too often, but pretty much every time that you're using the Cipher to steal something, hopefully you're stealing a Link monster with a higher Link rating, and then you can make these cards pretty easily. But outside of that, pretty much every game you're just making Phoenix and Link Kribo, and but most often you're just summoning the Chaos Max Dragon. Your opponent is like scooping after 2 turns, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. But anyway, that is the extra deck. We have 5 Synchros, 5 Exceeds, 5 Links, so we get a whole slew of different extra deck summoning. Yeah, anyway, that's the deck profile. I think this deck, like I said, is the best it's ever been, maybe since Zodiac format, but I think that this is actually just like way better right now than it was in Zoo format, even though that was like the other time it was good, only because in Zoo they were playing Dimensional Barrier, which stopped ritual summoning. Right now, this thing's almost always going to hit the field as long as your opponent doesn't preempt, or as long as your opponent doesn't save the Reincarnation for when the ritual summon happens. But hopefully you can go second, draw evenly matched, get out their whole board, summon Chaos Max Dragon, and now they just don't have enough cards to actually make a Borreload Dragon and kill it. I think that's like the main strategy. So anyway though, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you appreciated that I can notice that Chaos Max Dragon is actually halfway decent right now. I'm not ashamed to say that it's good and actually show off a profile for it, because I do truly feel this is the best Blue Eyes variant for like the foreseeable future, as long as Sky Striker Trickstar is the best deck. I will see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.